Assalamualaikum, I'm Carl Arrindell and you're watching In Focus. I'm pleased to be joined today by Nurul Izaah binti Anwar. Now, Nurul Izaah Anwar is the current Member of Parliament for Lembah Pentai in Kuala Lumpur. She is also Vice President of Parti Keadilan Rakyat, the People's Justice Party. Crucially, she is the daughter of Anwar Ibrahim, the former Malaysian Deputy Prime Minister and the current de facto opposition leader and head of the PKR. Nurul's mother, Wan Azizah Wan Ismail, is the president of PKR. Nurul Anwar, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Islam Channel.
Wa alaikum salam, Carl, thank you for having me.
Now, I understand that it was the arrest in 1998 of your father, Anwar Ibrahim,
Yes.
the former Deputy Prime Minister, which prompted you to go into politics. Indeed, you caused quite an upset when you overturned historically safe seat of the three-term incumbent in Lembah Pentai. Was your victory at this election, in your opinion, a vote of support for your father, or a vote of confidence for you, or a sign of the growing dissatisfaction of the electorate in the prevailing economic crisis facing the entire country?
Well, my win in 2008, the 12th general elections, was due to many factors. It was the first time in Malaysia's history, at least in recent times, that the opposition denied the Malaysian government's two-thirds majority. So in terms of elections, you could see there was a huge outpouring. People demanded change. Of course, my father was also very well known, and I am sure most of them associated the support with him. And I would like to think at the end of the day, they still voted and crossed my name on the ballot paper. So whatever it is, we were enjoying the momentum for change in the year 2008.
And would you describe yourself as your father's daughter? Are you an Anwar Ibrahim disciple?
I think it's important to take stock, part of my identity, my father, who my father is, who my mother is. But one thing people forget is I spent 6 years of my life growing up alongside opposition leaders when he was imprisoned as a political prisoner. So those 6 years, I learned politics, I spoke and campaigned alongside the Democratic Action Party leaders, the opposition and the Islamic Party in Malaysia. So I would like to see myself, or at least I feel that I'm a child of the Reformasi generation more than anything else.
Now, you've commented that one of your principal objectives in getting into politics has been, and I'm quoting you, to continue the legacy of multiracialism. Now, towards the end of last year, you were the subject of some controversy when you were asked at an open forum about the subject of freedom of religion. Newspaper headlines suggested that your response was that Malays were free to choose religion, and you were accused of promoting apostasy. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understood that the freedom of religion was enshrined in the constitution in Malaysia. Is that right?
So going back to your earlier premise, your first question was about multiracialism. And it's important to understand that Malaysia is a multiracial, multi-religious country. And the main reason why I joined the People's Justice Party, because we were advocating, fighting for multiracial politics. The issue of fighting for justice, it goes across racial boundaries. So it's very important for me for Malaysians to leave the current politics of race, racial, and just move on to embrace the future of Malaysia that is diverse. That is our strength. Now, secondly, on the point of religion, I was asked in an interfaith forum on the issue of freedom of religion, and I quoted La ikraha fid din, of course, a verse from the Quran, which clearly states that there is no compulsion in religion. And this, of course, in the Quran doesn't state just for Malays or non-Malays, it's for humankind. And I think what's important here is to understand there is freedom of religion located in the Federal Constitution, but Malays, as defined in the Federal Constitution, are considered Muslims. For me, I stated very clearly from the onset, I remain tied to prevailing views in Malaysia. under the rubric of the Federal Constitution. Now, what saddens me is to note the use of vile tactics and negative propaganda by sheer total government media control to attack people who are not associated with the ruling party. Now, this is wrong. I think in a country such as Malaysia, you should have a level degree of tolerance for greater understanding, for discourse, because that's the main point that enriches us. So the attack basically is to showcase I am campaigning for apostasy, which is completely unacceptable. And therefore, I'm actually suing the mainstream paper that has pictured me in such a negative manner, and the case starts Monday.
Oh, well, that's timing.
Yes.
Now, you've stated that it is your hope that Malaysia will become a two-party state, devoid, as you said, of racist rhetoric. Is it fair to say that you regard Malaysia, therefore, at the moment as a one-party racist state? Is that reasonable?
That's quite a way to put it. Well, Malaysia, we've been governed by one party since independence. You talk about 2008, there was one of the first times that Malaysia's ruling coalition were denied two-thirds majority, and the opposition won 4 out of 13 states. So it's, we have a long way to go before we can realize a two-coalition, party system. And I think this is important because you talk about democracy. Any working, active democracy requires, in terms of changes at the federal level, ensuring that policies are debated, ensuring that the electorates can enjoy different styles of governance. And a two-coalition system or two-party system is important in this regard. Now, I mentioned racialist. Why? Because the current government of the day, made up of 14 component parties, the National Front. Now, the leader of that party, UMNO, is a racially based party for the Malays. And I do think it's untenable. Whatever it may be, you must focus on ensuring there is greater degree of national cohesion, unity amongst the races. And what is the worst thing about the current government is the use of politics of race, of religion, to further divide the community. They are giving solid support behind a hegemonic group called Perkasa. So these people can act violently against others, use racial rhetorics to attack the non-Malays and get away with it.
But some would argue that it's really democracy delivers results, sometimes not that everybody is happy with, and the government is elected on a popular vote. Are you saying that the apparatus is at fault that allows that to happen, or is it purely that the mechanisms for media are forcing a popular vote that's not correct?
Well, you talk about elections. Elections are important, but again, you need democratic institutions to be alive and kicking. And the problem with Malaysia is, yes, you have elections one every 4 or 5 years, but the workings of the elections, we have a flawed election commission. And this has been attested to by the numerous demonstrations, the last that took place on the 12th of January. Almost 300,000 Malaysians came together peacefully demanding free and fair elections. They stated that we can no longer tolerate an election commission that is subservient and partisan to the current government, which does not allow the true voice of the people to emerge.
Now, moving on, you've spoken about the fact that Malaysian society seems more bent towards ensuring that men occupy positions of influence and control. I'm aware that you happen to be vice president of your party. I know your mother, Aziza Ismail, is the president of your party. I suppose you just happen to be exceptions to the rule. How important is it that women play a significant role in the Malaysian political arena and also business and civil society?
I think Malaysia is in a very unique position because you have many strong women occupying various offices. You have a female bank governor, a national bank, and you also have a former Securities Commission, a woman who headed the Securities Commission. As for my mother, she took up the mantle during the reform movement when my father was imprisoned for 6 years. So I think, to accurately depict the situation, I feel in my years in politics, and I was a member of parliament in 2008, the political landscape is very much shaped to fit the role of a man. So that's why it's important not just for women, but for men as well, to start advocating or implementing policies that are friendly to women. Because you want a holistic leader that is able to spend time for the family, for the society. And I don't just mean in politics. You talk about even women, working mothers. They require flexible policies to ensure that their children can be sent to childcare centres, crash, etc. So the point is to focus on developing a society that cares, that nurtures women, that nurtures the family as a unit.
Well, it's one thing, isn't it, modifying the society on practical basis so that it makes it more conducive for women to take a part. But isn't there a sort of cultural resistance to women having a role?
I think for Malaysia, that's why in the region, I think we're one of the more progressive countries in that regard, and I have to admit this. The only thing is, right now, the percentage of women in the labour force stands at 0.46, 46%, very low compared to Vietnam and other countries in the region. So you need to incorporate women because we have such a high number of women graduates that don't end up working because they leave the workforce. Yeah, because, there's also demands from the family. You must start thinking how to incorporate women, how to make sure they be part and they contribute to the growth of the economy. So I think that cultural resistance aside, I think the moment is ripe. I think that, there's that level of readiness, especially in society. I mean, for me, coming from a party, we were the first to introduce 30% women participation, the target for women participation at all policy-making levels.
Well, you definitely achieved that at the executive level.
Yes.
But let me ask you then, what are the special qualities that women possess that could bring meaningfully to the table? And if you might perhaps shed some light, you've been now in politics for quite a few years. You're almost a veteran.
No.
Has there been any meaningful shift towards greater inclusion of women in the last number of years?
I think so. You talk about, because when the opposition took control of the 4 states, we started introducing 90-day maternity leave, which was, the government had to emulate us, and slowly we introduced, increase from the 60 days to 90 days. We also had more than 40% representation of ministers at the Selangor state where we govern. So we make sure women are brought to the front, but the main prerequisite is you have to be a good leader, that you are capable to lead. And yes, you happen to be a woman, but I see it from a bigger point of view. Even men, the need to be more sensitive to women, it shouldn't just be a burden shouldered by women alone, also men. And once you start understanding there's no such thing as women's issues, it's our issues, then you start changing the landscape.
Now, I have to ask you this. Is it feasible that we may see, in your lifetime, Malaysia's first female Prime Minister? Perhaps I'm even talking to her.
I think what's important is we need a good Prime Minister. So my focus is to make sure that we have a good Prime Minister that's going to implement, changes in the political landscape to make sure we eradicate corruption. We practice good governance. That's the priority.
Now, onto something a somewhat controversial issue. It's fair to say that you have found it difficult to escape the controversy surrounding the charges against your father. You've described this as, and I'm quoting you, smacking of a political conspiracy. What exactly did you mean when you said that? I mean, are you referring to the undue influence that some people said that Tun Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, Malaysia's longest-serving Prime Minister enjoys.
In 1998, when my father was first charged with sodomy and, of course, corruption, it was clearly politically motivated. There were trumped-up charges, and the evidence adduced, or strongest evidence adduced, was from the report commissioned by the International Court of Justice and the International Bar Association entitled Malaysia Justice in Jeopardy 2000. And it clearly stated that in his conviction, there was clearly executive-led influence leading to the outcome. So for me, I started campaigning at the time for his release as a political prisoner, as well as others, so many others who were imprisoned under the Internal Security Act. Why? Because they were against the ruling party. So it's very sad that in the year 2008, we were again faced with a second sodomy charge, which was later, alhamdulillah, overturned. But my point is, you have the courts, they are not independent. We've produced evidence time and again. That is why we are advocating reform. It is not just about Anwar Ibrahim. The fact that you have judges that can be bought, you have a media that remains under control of the government, means that you have to start changing and ensuring these basic institutions are independent, so they can protect the rights of Malaysians regardless of creed, regardless of colour and religion.
Now, you've been outspoken about what you refer to as the reform movement of 1998, saying that the many attempts to curtail the freedom of speech of opposition groups represent one of your greatest challenges. Can you clarify in which way you see such limitations and barriers imposed? I mean, I suppose what apparatus is deployed and how it's used.
Well, you have, I mentioned earlier about the Election Commission, but more fundamentally in terms of day-to-day campaigning, we don't have a free media. Everything, is controlled. The mainstream media is controlled. 99% of it is controlled by the federal government through various parties of the ruling coalition. There's no room for the public to hear about the opposition or the successes that we've made. That's one. Secondly, through the various registrar of societies, institutions of democratic institutions in the country, they are used to strengthen Barisan National Front's stranglehold over the electorate. And of course, you have people being charged under the Sedition Act. I myself tried to seek a permit to publish a paper, rejected by virtue of the Printing Presses and Publications Act. So in that case, where is the room? You talk about a democracy, yet you do not practice it. And this is a disservice to many. And of course, previously, the Internal Security Act, I know it has been removed in recent times and replaced with a new act. But the point of the matter is we can't even organize peaceful demonstrations. There's also always charges preferred against many opposition leaders because the government can choose from a list. So, like I said, I don't think we need to wait for things to degrade any further. We can certainly ensure that we improve the system right now.
Now, tell me a bit about your attempts to introduce what I think is referred to as the Emergency Revocation Bill. What is it and how important is it?
Well, Malaysia, we've been under the state of emergency up till the year 2011. So basically, when you talk about a democracy, it's important to remove the emergency declaration, because every single time you have an outspoken opposition, they always use the communist bogeyman, and it's as if we're trapped in the 1960s, where the world has evolved, has changed. And because of that, as a legislator in the August House, I introduced a bill to revoke the emergency declaration and to ensure that we are actually enjoying a state in peace. That was 6 months before the Prime Minister eventually revoked the emergency. And at the time, my bill was rejected because the government felt there was no need to end the emergency. 6 months later, the Prime Minister plagiarized, which I'm happy that he did, but plagiarized the bill. And like I said, regardless if it came from the government, it has to be genuine and everyone will accept it. And the problem that we have now is not all the reforms that he pledged have been implemented, and that's the problem.
But it's a start.
It is a start. But my concern is he has also gone backwards in some of the instances in terms of supporting wholeheartedly this racist group and allowing them to employ violence in attacking the opposition. This is perkasa. I was personally attacked in one of my rallies in rural Pahang. So, and the police does nothing because there's orders, political instruction for them to give these people immunity. So that's why I said he started out well, actually, on the 16th of September 2010. But 2011, sorry. But somehow the political will is not there.
Now, I've heard you referring to the current administration of Prime Minister Najib Razak as going back to the hardline Mihardlist years. For the benefit of our viewers, would you please explain what that means, what it is, and to what extent Malaysia, which, let's face it, for decades has been regarded as the model of modernisation and economic success, both in the Islamic world and outside it, to what extent is it now in need of political reform, you say?
I'm very proud of Malaysia. I think we've done so well. And that's why it's important to take stock of current weaknesses for us to prosper further. There's no use patting ourselves in the back and saying, we're great. Malaysia boleh, Malaysia can. I think we have to be more humble to understand that right now the Malaysian economy is trapped in a middle income trap. We've had, 15 years of continuous deficit. We have a lot of problems with regards to corruption and leakages. A lot of direct tenders are taking place. We've had so many controversies, even surrounding the buying of 2 submarines with a 500 million commission tag, so involving the Prime Minister. So, like I said, why should any law-abiding patriotic Malaysian citizen take this sitting down? It's important to understand that what Najib is doing right now, despite his pledges of transformation, is to continue Mahathir's penchant for mega mammoth infrastructure projects given to cronies, selected few. You can do that in the past, sure, because the world was not facing a recession. Now it's different. Now Malaysia would need to find ways to survive and escape the middle income trap, as I mentioned earlier. Malaysia would need to find ways to stop the outflow of illegal funds amounting to almost 1 trillion ringgit in the past 10 years. So, for me, when I mention Mahathir is the penchant for mega projects, the fact that corruption is taking place, cronyistic practices to the selected few, and the use of politics of hatred. You are scaring the electorate. Every single time you say there's elections, people can choose, but you say if you vote for change, you vote for chaos. And this is employed by Najib, surprisingly. I mean, I did give him benefit of the doubt. But that is why I said, I don't want to return to the Mahathir's years. Though that was in the past. I want to move on. And I want us to embrace a more democratic future for Malaysia.
Well, on that profound note and those dire warnings, shall I say, Nurul Izaah Anwar, thank you so much for joining us on Islam Channel.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.